Tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves anyone out there, him, her, them, they, and you, to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show. This daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, racial inequality, is the topic here today, and I'm going to tell you why racial inequality is a fight that you can't win. All right, so you want to fight racial inequality? Like I heard, I think it was Nike put something out. I mean, 1,000 different companies have put stuff out saying they want to fight racial inequality. And you've seen this. Maybe your company put something out that said it. Maybe you have put something out that said you want to fight racial inequality. Today, I'm going to tell you why racial inequality is a fight that you can't win. Now, you can get in the fight if you want, but I'm telling you that you're not going to win a fight against racial inequality. I'm going to explain why you can't win that fight. And I'm going to explain, and in the process of doing that, I'm going to explain some things that you can do. All right, if you want to fight, and you want to use some energy, I'm going to tell you what you can do. Now, just yesterday, I talked about what black people can do with the energy of the social justice, quote unquote, movement. Today, I'm going to tell you why racial inequality, if you do want to fight something, you shouldn't be fighting this, because you're going to lose. It's like banging against a cement wall. Now, I, like you, have seen all these conversations about equality, fighting racial injustice. I don't need to give a lot of background on this, do I? I don't think so. What I want to talk about today is why the proof that you can find, and proof is in quotation marks, so the quote, proof, close quote, that you can find that represents or shows, exemplifies racial inequality is not important. I'm not telling you that the proof is not proof. Some of it ain't. Some of it is not accurate. Some of it is statistics that are manipulated. Some of it is people just looking at the wrong statistics and saying, okay, so this proves inequality because this person has this person has that. Well, there are questions that are not being asked. I'll give you an example. In the Miami New Times, which is a liberal leftist newspaper publication that I follow online because it tells a lot of stuff that's going on in Miami, so I follow it to see what's going on. I get news from them. And one of the things that they talked about was there was this black guy. He had started some kind of activist movement in Miami for black-owned businesses because, according to the story in the Miami New Times, black people had only been awarded like 6% of these certain types of contracts, 2% of this type of contract, and 3% of this type of contract over the course of a year or over multiple years. And it was presented, the story was presented in such a way as if to say that black people were just not getting a fair shake because black people are a certain percentage of the population, certain percentage of business owners, but they only got this smaller, much smaller percentage proportionally of contracts awarded to them. And I read the story, and the guy has his quotes in it. He's saying the things that he's saying, and they're going to do this, and they have this activism going on. All fine and good. But here's a very important question that was never asked, and the information was never shared in the story. And if you don't know how to think three-dimensionally, you would not even think to ask this question. Here's the question that I posed, and it replied on Twitter to them. Nobody has replied yet. I'll let you know if anybody ever does. Here was the question. How many black-owned businesses actually applied for the contracts? Now, you might say only 6 out of 100 black-owned businesses were actually awarded contracts, but that is, and if someone's presenting that information as if to say, well, it's racial inequality because only 6% of black people were awarded the contracts. Well, here's the question. What was the percentage of black people who actually applied for the contracts? Because if only 6% of the applicants were black and then 6% of the winners were black, then it's actually perfect. It's perfectly equal. So what we need to know is how many people applied so we can see, is this actually inequality or is it not? But without that information, we cannot come to the conclusion that it was inequality. And you see, when people are trying to tell you that something's unequal, or they're trying to tell you, well, the black people only have this and white people have that, and this group has that, and this is inequality, the thing is, they usually leave out some information that could give you a whole lot more context as to whether it's actual inequality or not. And smart people who create these arguments, they know exactly what they're doing. And they take advantage of people who don't know how to ask the right questions. All that being said, since I don't need to give that much more background on inequality or whatever people consider to be inequality, today I'm going to tell you why, again, some of the proof that you find is not important, not even because people are giving you inaccurate information, or incomplete information rather is a better way of saying it, is because you can't change the reality of inequality even if you wanted to. And I'm going to explain to you why that is here today. It has nothing to do with statistics. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is racial inequality, the fight that you cannot win. Number one, the idea of inequality being wrong is a farce in itself. It's a complete farce to say that inequality is wrong. Let me tell you why. Do you go to school? Are you in school right now? Everybody's going to some level of school, right? Now, when you were in school, were all the students of equal levels of intelligence? Were there some students in the class that were just better than you, at least in academic performance? Maybe you thought they were smarter than you. Maybe they were quote unquote book smart while you were quote unquote street smart. Were there some people who were just better than you in terms of academic performance for whatever reason? You can have whatever reason why they were better or you were better. Were there some kids better and there were some kids who were just garbage when it came to academic performance? Yes or no? Have any of you ever played a sport? Are there some players on that team who are just better than other players? Is everybody equal on a sports team? Any of you ever played on a sports team? Were there some players on that team who just shouldn't have been on the team because they had no game, no skill whatsoever? They sat the bench all season, or God forbid, they actually got to play and made it worse for the team because they had no game and everybody knew they had no game before they even got on the court or the field or the track? Is everybody equal in skill or production or future prospects? Any of you ever played high school sports and then you went and played a college? You played that same sport in college, and many of your teammates did not get past playing in high school. Their careers ended at high school. Why is that? Because you had more game than them. You had more skill than them. Maybe you made different choices than them. Maybe you had better grades than them so you could go to college. They didn't have good enough grades to even get accepted to a college. Therefore, your career continued and theirs ended. Is this true? Does this happen? Ladies and gentlemen, am I crazy to pose these questions? The idea going around these days is that since we're talking races here, we could be talking about anything. We'll just use race here because this is the hot topic in 2020. Since the idea is that since whites and blacks are not equal in whatever measure is being used, that something must be done to make things be balanced, to make things be equal. But the problem with this is simply not how the world works. You cannot manufacture equality. Human beings are not all equal. No policy, no monetary donation, no committee, no elected government official is going to change the fact that everybody is not equal. Everyone does not have the same skill level. Everyone does not have the same amount of talent. Everyone does not get the same levels of opportunities. Every opportunity is not made available to everyone. You may think that is wrong. You may think that's not okay. I'm here to tell you that this is just what the fuck it is. Now, whether you want to try and change that, you want to try and shift the earth, you want to try and change the world and making everybody get the exact same opportunities at the exact same time and the exact same way, that's impossible. Again, you can try if you want. I mean, it's your life. You can do whatever you want with your time, money, attention, energy, and focus, your 5 forms of investment. But understand that I'm telling you right now, you can either take it from me or you can learn it through your own experience. But when you learn it through your own experience, you won't have any time left to make some better choices. It is impossible to make everybody be equal in terms of skill, in terms of talent, in terms of performance, in terms of choice, even in terms of opportunity. Do you think everyone should get equal opportunity? Somebody sent me an email maybe a month ago, black woman, she knows who she is, and she said, Dre, I understand what you're saying, people make different choices, but everybody should get the same amount of opportunity. And I said, no, they should not. Everybody should not get the same amount of opportunity. Why? Because everybody ain't the same. All right, if I'm 6'4" and you're 5'7", should you and I both get the same opportunity to make an overseas basketball team? No, because the overseas team doesn't want no 5'7" players. They don't give a damn how much heart you have, how hard you work, how bad you want it, how many hours you spent working out in the off season, how much Mamba mentality you have. They don't give a fuck about any of that. Why? Because they just don't want you, because you do not have the requirements. You do not meet the requirements of what they're looking for. It does not matter how much you want it. Everyone does not get the same opportunity, and everyone does not have the same talent, everyone does not have the same skills, and that's why everybody is unique. Point number 2. Today's topic is racial inequality. This is a fight that you cannot win, but you can fight it if you wish. Number 2, the advancement of black people, since we're talking race, has nothing to do with what white people do or need to do for black people. Let me say that again. The advancement of black people in America has absolutely nothing to do with what white people do, don't do, or need to do for black people. The advancement of blacks in America is 100% about what black people will or are willing to do for themselves. That's the key to the advancement of black people. What are black people willing to do for themselves? And here's the kicker, ladies and gentlemen. Those blacks who are willing to do for self, willing to help themselves out, willing to make smart choices, willing to make sound decisions, willing to exercise discipline and personal initiative in helping themselves, guess what? Let me tell you a secret about those black people. They're already doing it. See, there are black people who are living in America who are listening to this show right now. What is this show about? All right, this is not some entertainment. This isn't some bullshit. This is some personal growth, personal development, make yourself better, investing in yourself, learning how to be a more valuable individual, learning how to think on different levels, learning how to think in different dimensions. That's what this show is about overall. Not just this episode, but this entire show, and most of the material that I put out is on that level at all times, every day, on all platforms, written, audio, video. The people who want to help themselves out are doing it right now. People who want to help themselves out are reading books or writing them, watching and learning educational material or creating educational material, doing things to uplift the community or being uplifted by the people who are doing things to uplift so that they will eventually get to the point where they can uplift somebody else. Each one teach one. Those who are willing to do for self in the black community are already doing for self. So when people make this argument of we need to pull other people up via creating equality, listen, it sounds excellent. It sounds like a great plan. It looks very noble. Most people are going to applaud you when you propose this idea that we need to create this equality amongst everybody. It sounds amazing. Here's the problem. It's going to fail. Because people who don't want to be pulled up, they ain't coming up. Let me say that again. People who don't want to be pulled up are not coming up. And if you try to pull those people up against their will, they will not stay up, even if you succeed. There's only two things that can happen when you try to pull somebody up against their will. You try to uplift the person and they don't want to be uplifted. You will either A, uplift them and they will get to a position in which they are not prepared to be at, basically putting muscles on a person who didn't earn the muscles in the gym. They won't know what to do with that body. Their body may reject the muscles that you have injected into them, and they'll fall right back down to where they were, and they'll fall a whole lot harder because of the fact that you lifted them to a height that they shouldn't have been at in the first place. Or B, they will resist you're trying to pull them up, and you will wear yourself out trying to pull them up in the first place and fail at it. You'll never even get them to come up. You take a broke individual who's working on their game, who's trying to improve, who's trying to make themselves better, who's investing in themselves, but they're broke right now. They ain't got no money. Get them $100,000. They may make great things happen with that $100,000. Why? Because they're working on their game, they're investing in themselves, they're learning, they're getting educated, they're doing things to make themselves better. So if you give them an opportunity, give them a resource, they will do something positive with the resource. If you don't give them the resource, they will eventually get that resource on their own. Now, if you give a broke-minded individual $100,000, now let me be clear, what's a broke-minded individual as opposed to a broke person? Broke is a temporary state. Broke just means you don't have anything right now, but it's temporary. That can change from moment to moment. A broke-minded individual, we also call this person poor. This is the way that you think. Poor is a way of being. Like I talk about with my book, The Mirror Motivation, how you are being leads to what you do, which leads to what you have. Poor, broke-minded is a way of thinking. You give a broke-minded individual $100,000, what's going to happen to them? Nothing's going to happen to them because very soon they'll be right back broke with no money. A broke-minded person has no money, okay? Or they have very little and they will soon be separated from the little that they have. You get them a lot. Get them $100,000. That's a lot of money. No matter how much you got, they will soon be separated from their money. Why? Because of their mentality. It is not because of inequality. It's not because of race. It's not because of oppression. It's because of that person's own foolishness, their own decision making, and just their level of being, the wavelength that they think on. Because of the wavelength that they think on, they will become broke all over again because of their mindset. It has nothing to do with inequality. It has nothing even to do with their color. You do this, give a white person who's broke-minded $100,000, they'll go broke too. Some people are just not built to succeed, ladies and gentlemen. Not everybody wants to succeed. Not everybody wants to come up. Not everyone wants to get better. Not everyone wants to invest in themselves. Not everyone wants to do the work. All right, this is just the way that life is laid out. And again, You don't need to put too much time and thought into why other people don't want to come up. As Jim Rome said, I would not sign up for that class. Everybody just doesn't want it. All right, you need to focus on what you're doing, not what everybody else is doing or isn't doing. Point number 3. Today's topic is racial inequality. This is the fight that you cannot win, but again, you can try if you wish. Number 3, the actual inequality amongst races, if you want to talk about it. The inequality is not about the entire group, because there are plenty of black people out there who are doing just fine, if not doing great. All right, there are some black people out there who are doing better than some white people. Now, there's some black people who are doing better than a whole lot of white people. So there is no way to force the entire group of any race to do well. Black, white, yellow, green. You can't force any race to all do well via some type of equality initiative, because here's the reason why you can't force it. All right, even if you try, it is not tangible materials that make a group get better. For a group's level to raise, it is not about their tangible materials. You give every black person $100,000. All right, technically every black person is now in the top 10% of income earners in America, if it all went down as income, right? If you give all of them that 100,000, those are tangible goods. That will not raise the level of black people, even though a lot of people think it would not. You know why? Because the mentality of the people with the money that determine what happens to them. It is not how much money you have, is what you do with the money that determines where you end up. I'll give you an example that is very ironic given the times of where we live. Donald Trump, before he got into politics, was very famous as a brash branding expert / real estate mogul, very rich man. All right, whatever arguments you want to make about any of those titles, that's not the point. He was very known for this, okay? For one reason or another. Donald Trump was known as having a lot of money. Then there came a point when things stopped working for him, when his businesses were failing, when he was going underwater financially, he was in debt, he was bankrupt, he was worth a negative amount of money. And in one of his books, he talked about this. One day he walked past a beggar on the street who was sleeping on the street. And Donald Trump said, all right, this guy's worth $0. I'm worth negative $9 billion. He's actually richer than me right now. This man, this beggar on the street with absolutely nothing, at least he's at neutral. He's at 0. I'm in the hole. I'm at negative. This guy's net worth is higher than mine right now. But many people use Trump as an example for this because he had the mentality of being rich. He had the mentality of making money, because he had the mentality of a person who knows how to create wealth. He went from being a billionaire to being a negative billionaire, being in the hole billions of dollars, to being rich all over again, not because of some tangible physical material advantage that he may or may not have had, but mostly because of his mentality. Because of the mentality, he was able to take advantage of the opportunities in front of him, or were able to create opportunities in front of him and get back to where he needed to be, from up to down to back up. There is no way to force an entire group or even to force an individual person to raise their level, because you cannot force someone to have the mentality that they need to have to be successful. You could talk about it all day. You could send them all the books you want to send them. You could play one of Dre Baldwin's master classes in the car while they're riding with you and ride so fast that they can't get out. They just got to listen to it. But their mentality only changes when they want to change. You cannot force a person to change their mentality. You cannot make people want to work on themselves. And if you give something to people who don't want to, you give anything to people who don't want to do the work, to work on themselves, to get better, to improve themselves, to grow into the type of person who is capable of handling an advantage, and you give them an advantage which they have not earned and they are not prepared for, they will blow the advantage and do absolutely nothing with it, despite your best efforts. Let's recap today's class, which is racial inequality, the fight that you cannot win, even if you try. Point number 1, the idea of inequality being wrong is a farce in itself, because if you went to school, if you ever played a sport, if you ever had a job, you understand that students, athletes, and employees are not equal in skill, they're not equal in intelligence, they're not equal in discipline, they're not equal in follow-through, they're not equal in persistence, they're not equal in performance. No two people are exactly equal at everything, even if they're identical twins. So whatever measure you're using to show that people are not equal, you're absolutely right. People are not equal. You don't need to measure anything to know that. You can't do anything to force balance on people because human beings are not equal. No policy, no monetary donation, no elected official is going to change that. Point number two, the advancement of black people is not about white people, what they do or what they need to do for black people. It is about what blacks are willing to do for themselves. Like I talked about yesterday, we need to look inward and forward instead of outward and backward. The kicker is those black people who can do things to help themselves out and are willing to do things to help themselves out are already doing it. There are plenty of examples of them out there. The challenge is we don't pay enough attention to them and follow their examples, but instead we focus on the people at the bottom of the society and what happens to them as if they were forced to be at the bottom of society. Anybody can pull themselves up if they're willing to do the work. A lot of people just don't have the mentality to do so. So I appoint people like myself to help people get the mentality so that they can help themselves instead of looking around wondering who is going to help them, because the answer is nobody. Point number three, the actual inequality in life is not about the entire group. There are black people who are doing just fine. They're doing great, better than even some white people. There's no way to force an entire race to do well since it's not tangible materials that make people do well. It is the mentality of the people that make them do well. You give a whole bunch of broke-minded people $1 million, they will go broke all over again because their mentality is broke. It has nothing to do with the amount of dollars that they have in their pockets. So when you see a company pledging to donate millions of dollars to some cause or starting some fund or starting some charity to help black people or help underprivileged or to fight racial inequality, understand that they are just doing that to save their asses, to look good to the sheep who don't know how to think on 3 dimensions. It is not actually going to do anything to help broke-minded individuals or poor-minded or failure-minded individuals. It will help the people who already have a positive mindset of getting to where they want to go. It will maybe speed up their progress, but the people with the right mindset, the work on your game mindset to actually improve themselves from the inside out, they will become successful one way or another with or without a donation from some CEO of some white-owned company. All right, it is not about the money that is being given. It is not about the pledges being put out. It's not about the t-shirts being worn, the hashtags, the basketball courts being built in the neighborhood. It is about the mentality of the people within. When the mentality changes, the results will change as a whole. Now, again, can some material things help people out? Yes, it can speed up the process, but it will not change it will not change the direction that somebody's going in. If your mentality is broke, I could put you in the nicest suburb, in the nicest house with plenty of money, everything taken care of. You will find a way to fuck that up if you are a failure-minded individual. A successful-minded individual, you can put them in the worst situation, in the worst neighborhood, and they will make decisions that will lead them out of that situation into a more positive space simply because of the power of their mentality. That's my argument. Work on your game. Dre, all